it dawned on me that if folks right here in Philadelphia, in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey area, have that much fear, despite the local protections that we have, right? What about the folks in Alabama, Oklahoma, right? Wyoming, Nebraska, where it's not as easy to be out, first and foremost. So you may not be out about your relationship. And so then to seek out legal counsel for specific legal needs having to do with the fact that you're LGBTQ, but you're not even out, or if you are out, but there's not competent legal counsel that knows how to address those legal needs.
Welcome to On Record PR, where we go on record with industry leaders to discuss best practices for public relations strategies that drive business success. Let's get started with the show.
Welcome to On Record PR. I'm your host, Gina Rubel. Today, I'm going on record with Angela Giampolo, the owner of Giampolo Law Group, which services the LGBTQ community for all of your legal needs. Angela is the founder of Caravan of Hope, an initiative that seeks to alleviate the burdens and stress experienced by the most vulnerable in the LGBT community. In fact, Caravan of Hope also seeks to ensure that the LGBTQ people living in rural communities have access to the resources they need to live and thrive. Throughout June and for Pride Month of 2023, Angela took an RV across the country, providing pro bono legal services to underserved and underrepresented LGBTQ individuals. Her services included everything from transgender name changes and gender marker changes to wills, uncontested divorces, and getting started on adoption. Angela, also known as the Philly Gay Lawyer, is an expert on LGBTQ legal issues and has been featured as a leading expert on national media, including NPR, CBS, Fox News, and NBC. She's provided insight as a legal columnist for the Legal Intelligencer, Philadelphia Business Journal, and Philadelphia Gay News. In addition, I have known Angela for at least a decade, and we are both active members with the Philadelphia Bar Association. I'm super excited to have her on the show. She's coming to us, so depending on when this airs, from the Caravan. And I think, according to the website for Caravan of Hope, today you are somewhere between Laramie, Wyoming, and Omaha, Nebraska. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, we left Laramie this morning. They were going to get, yesterday we were under tornado watch until 8 p.m. and then golf ball, hail the size of golf balls starting at 1 p.m. So we got out of Dodge and heading to Omaha earlier than anticipated. But tomorrow is our service day in Omaha.
That's fantastic. And, well, first of all, happy Pride Month, my friend.
Thank you. That's awesome. I love it.
My handmade Pride mug for the listeners. I bought a mug with a rainbow when I was in Canada last year. So it's also, to our fellow Canadian or originally Canadian on the call.
Yeah, exactly. What part? Where were you?
We went up to Nova Scotia. But I bought this in New Brunswick.
Okay.
On my way home from this great potter that I met up there. And so I just loved it. And I thought, well, it definitely needs to be used every day for the month of June. So
that's awesome. I love it.
Well, so Angela, tell me about the Caravan of Hope and how you're working to address the needs of the most vulnerable in the LGBT community.
Yeah, I mean, so Philadelphia, right? It's a haven for LGBTQ rights, has been forever. We were one of the first cities in 1996, due to Mayor Kenny, actually, when he was councilman, that created a life partnership registry, right? Going on just decades and decades and decades ago, the fight for LGBTQ rights was very active in Philadelphia. And I never take that for granted as an LGBTQ advocate. And so when President Trump was elected, but before the inauguration, the amount of fear and therefore questions that were coming to me from Facebook messages, DMs, like it was the first time. I've had my law firm for 15 years. People, they find me, they go to the website, they fill out through the contact us form, right? But this was like DMs, Facebook messages, like text messages if they could get my cell phone. Like it was like, urgent, right? And so it dawned on me that if folks right here in Philadelphia, in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey area, have that much fear, despite the local protections that we have, right? What about the folks in Alabama, Oklahoma, right? Wyoming, Nebraska, where it's not as easy to be out, first and foremost. So you may not be out about your relationship. And so then to seek out legal counsel for specific legal needs having to do with the fact that you're LGBTQ, but you're not even out, or if you are out, but there's not competent legal counsel that knows how to address those legal needs. So just predominantly, very much so behind the eight ball after you leave the coasts, right? I feel like a lot of places on the coast, kind of, except for Florida, but we lost Florida a long time ago. But otherwise the coasts tend to be very progressive. Cities tend to be very progressive. We're stopping in Chicago. It's the one city that definitely doesn't need me as a city, but it's easily accessible by so many places, right? Like and I didn't realize this until I really started doing the tour, but for people to drive 3.5 hours for something, it's absolutely the norm. Like we were in Birmingham, Alabama, and someone from Tennessee drove, just to come see us. And it was a 3-hour drive. So yeah, so the Caravan of Hope, was born out of, and actually 501c3 filings shot up 37% after Trump's election. So I wasn't the only one. I think a lot of people sat there and they were like, what can I do? Right. And what I do all day, every day for the LGBTQ community, but taking that on the road ultimately. And as the name suggests, Gina, like just spreading hope. Everyone who hears about it, it brings a smile to their face, whether they themselves need legal services, but just knowing that it's happening. So, it was sort of a twofer of just, and again, you have to think back to 2016. So we had just had Obama for 2 terms, and the way that the phrase hope, right, was sort of ingrained in us through the Obama administration. And so I think the word hope was just very much in my subconscious when I came up with the name Caravan of Hope at that time.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you on behalf of anyone and everyone in the LGBTQ community. If they're out, if they're not out, if they're an ally, if they're a supporter, if they're a friend, a family member, it just pains me as an ally to know how the world has changed. It's interesting you mentioned Philadelphia because I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. My dad actually did the legal work for the very first gay bar in Philadelphia called Upstairs Downstairs.
I just got chills.
Right. I was raised in a household of allies, and the Philadelphia Bar Association has been a great ally to all people, to all diversity. It pains me to see where we are today. And I have to ask, have you come across any negativity on the Caravan, or has it all been positive?
It has all been positive because we're sort of in a bubble of, we go from our host location, right, to where we sleep in the evening. We wake up, we go to the next host location. So like in Denver, we were at the LGBT Community Center, their version of the William Way Community Center. The lawyers that I meet, because again, I'm not, you interview lawyers and, you're very familiar that I'm not licensed in all of these states. So for this to happen seamlessly, I needed partner lawyers in every single one of these states. So I meet with the partner lawyers. We're at the host location, which is typically in sort of the neighborhood or an LGBTQ specific location. And then we leave and we go to the next one and we go to the next one and we go to the next one. But I will say there was a couple of moments, because we're going back from RV parks to some hotels to break it up, because there's 3 of us in this caravan. And so wanting to break it up for sanity purposes, plus my chihuahua. So there's really 4, 3.5 of us. But so in the RV parks, there was one in particular, I was walking Nico, my chihuahua, and he was off leash. And the guy was looking and he did not look happy that Nico was off the leash. And I couldn't really, but he was also, everybody I'll send you pictures and whatnot of the caravan. It's all decaled out, right? RV there yet, Caravan of Hope, cross country tour. Like, so it has the website, it has a QR code. So he's staring at it, and it turns out he was looking upon it nicely, and like exactly what you just said as an ally. Like, when people come for one, they eventually come for all. And it doesn't matter where you fall on the diversity spectrum, right? If it's a invisible disability, if you're Jewish, if you're a woman, it just like anywhere you are on the knapsack of privilege in terms of where your diversity falls. So he's from Texas, white, cis, straight male. And he just started out with, I just want to apologize for my state, because we could see his license plate. And so he thought like we were judging him. And so right away, it was sort of like a coming out, if you will, of him coming out as an ally, apologizing for his license plate. So I've been lucky, even in RV parks, that the people that have approached us because they want to say good things. And driving, that has been honestly the most fun thing, is like the caravan is all decaled out and cars come up, and they're honking and they're, thumbs up, and it's just heartwarming.
I'm so happy to hear that. Now I got chills. I mean, literally just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's all I can wish for you. I was thinking when you mentioned Florida, I'm a member of an organization called the Legal Marketing Association, and our president, Roy Sexton, is an out member of the LGBTQ community. And it was really hard having our conference there and being an inclusive organization with everything that's been going on. And Roy, I have to send it to you and I'll link it in the show notes. Roy opened the conference. He's also a thespian, so he's a phenomenal singer and actor. And he opened it with Lady Gaga's Born This Way. But he comes out and he's in sequins and he's singing and dancing. And then all of a sudden, after the first verse, he brings in this beautiful woman in drag, and she's in this incredible rainbow costume. And what was so beautiful, though, not just the performance, but the fact that just about every single person, we had over 1,200 attendees, were standing up and just screaming in joy for this moment. And this is how we opened our Legal Marketing Association International Conference. And to see that level of inclusion and spirit and love, and not just equality, but a sense of belonging, because we always talk about creating that sense of belonging. It was just amazing. I was in tears. I was in tears.
And I got chills when you were describing it. So we're just going back and forth on chill-worthy moments.
Right.
And to your point, everybody talks about inclusion, right? And sort of the history of DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's like a moment like that, it's more than about being included, right? Like you include someone, wonderful, thank you, right? It used to be back in the day, it was like, okay, we should play music that, when you're having an inviting party, right? Like music for all, right? But it's like music that the person can dance to, right? Wants to dance to, right? Like, and that's a moment like that where everybody's standing up. It was not just for the performance itself, but for his courage, right? Like there's so much happening in that moment that everybody is feeling. It's like honoring and acknowledging his courage, honoring and acknowledging who he is and loving him for it. The stance, the honoring and acknowledging the statement that he's making for the entire LGBTQ community, the political statement that he's making, doing it in Florida knowingly, right? Like there's so many layers there in him having done that. And I feel like, everyone standing up, like, and tears and all of the things, it's like all of those nuances were hitting you.
And I don't think a lot of people realize how many layers there are to peel off that onion. It's just so much. And I think one of the things I know you're doing is you're going across the country and you're peeling lots of layers with pressing legal issues. that the LGBTQ community faces that a lot of people, non-LGBTQ members of the community or straight cisgender people don't face. So what are some of the things that you've been dealing with and what's most pressing?
Definitely the most pressing and the most requested for two different reasons are transgender name changes and gender marker changes for folks. I say for two different reasons because one, the pressing piece is, as you may know, there are over 550 anti-LGBTQ bills that have been introduced this year alone, and HRC, Human Rights Campaign, first time in its 40-year history, has declared a national state of emergency around travel. Like if you're LGBTQ and avoiding, they announced it on the day we kicked off the caravan as I'm about to go through 14 states and travel more through the US than I ever had. But it was for that very reason, right? But for other folks that are just traveling to travel, they say, be careful if you have to research the laws of the state that you are traveling to see how you could be impacted. So for instance, when we were in Tennessee, Memphis, July 1, the laws are changing to make it much more difficult for trans folks and or non-binary to change their name and or gender marker on their IDs. And so we did a ton of name changes in Memphis and like literally said, go to the courthouse. Like if you have the filing fee, go. That's the other reason is the reason that's one of the most requested is these are pro bono legal services. So my legal partners have agreed to help pro bono. I'm obviously doing all of this pro bono. And trans folks are disproportionately impacted from an income perspective. They are 7 times more likely to be below the poverty level, 26 times more likely to be discriminated at work, and therefore not feel comfortable going to work. And so therefore being unemployed, not wanting their ID, right? If you look like me, but my ID says John Giampolo, right? Like, would I want that every day when I go to work? A lot of people's passwords to get into their work email or whatever, it's like their name is their username. So they're constantly typing a dead name, right? So a lot of folks, again, the nuances in the onion, right? They don't understand why so many trans folks are disproportionately lower income than others and in need of these services that are, sorry, expensive. Like it takes time. It's transactional. You don't have to go to court. Philadelphia has really streamlined their process as the name change department. Pete and Nora, shout out Pete and Nora in Philadelphia in the name change department. They're huge lies, but not everybody has a Pete and Nora in their town ultimately. And so there are many, many steps. It can be overly complex. If you have a lawyer, do it. The amount of hours it takes me to do it. So most lawyers charge $2,000 for a name change. And that's, more than some people make in 6 months. So definitely those two areas of law, both because of how trans folks are disproportionately impacted around their income, and then also all these laws that are going into effect to make it more difficult, like sort of now's the time for that. Additionally, I would say basic estate planning is key for folks that have transphobic parents or have been disowned for their LGBTQIA status in some way, shape, or form. Those parents or that hostile family is still their power of attorney, still legal next of kin. So just even getting POAs in the hands of someone that you feel safe with, not even a will or, that's like getting nice to have kind of thing, but very, very important, especially with the amount of health care and health treatment that trans folks need. They're constantly, they're dealing with healthcare providers around their hormones and they're transitioning. So getting powers of attorney in the hands of someone you trust. Uncontested divorces, only had the opportunity to assist with 2 adoptions, like not the actual adoption, but like getting them set up with agencies, what that system looks like and home studies and all of that in their particular county. But, that as well, like either random legal questions or we can't help them with what they thought was a legal question. And there's no service that can be provided per se, but what they end up doing is telling us their story and the hope, like literally their face and how they looked coming in and their nervousness and then and laughter later after telling us their life story, leaving more hopeful. So whether that's probably been one of the biggest things that I didn't anticipate.
So I know you're on the road, you're breaking up a little bit. So
Oh,
just in case our listeners are wondering, the caravan is going on and we're bringing this to you streaming from the road. So bear with us because we're not going to edit it out. This is real life, every day, real time. With that, we are going to pause for a message from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications. Recognized as the #1 agency by the National Law Journal, Furia Rubel helps top businesses and law firms with high-stakes public relations and marketing, reputation management, crisis planning, and incident response, including high-profile litigation media relations. To learn more, go to furiarubel.com or email podcast@furiarubel.com.
What words of encouragement can you offer to the LGBTQ individuals who are struggling with legal issues?
that's a really good question, because ultimately that's why I founded the Caravan of Hope, right? So after Pride Month, until next Pride Month, I won't be a resource. And depending on where the listeners are, they could be anywhere in the country. And so my encouragement is that with research, and even if it means reaching out to me to get my take on who is a safe ally or competent legal counsel out by you, and even if it's a 3-hour drive or a 1-hour drive, I have no doubt that we can find you competent, safe legal counsel. If you're in a position where you cannot retain counsel, depending on what the legal need is, there are community legal services somewhere in your area. There are the bar associations. The majority of bar associations have LGBTQ committees. And I know it's hard when you are worrying about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, clothing, shelter, right? To do this kind of research. So even if it's just reaching out to me to have me do this research, to hone in on where you can find pro bono legal services and or competent legal counsel, I know they exist and I will help you find them. That's my bit of encouragement.
I will say to our listeners, seek out Angela on social media. She's there. She's very active on social media. I think it's a great place to ask questions so that it can be shared more easily, more quickly. So I throw that out there. I will have all of your contact information in the show notes on our website at onrecordpr.com. So I do want to make sure that people know that. But right now, how can others, including members of the LGBTQ community and allies, support your efforts?
Yeah, and just real quick on your last point, I do Rainbow Minutes on social. So it's literally 60 seconds. You know what you're signing up for all the ADD, folks out there. Rainbow Minute. I never go over a minute, but I answer legal questions. So to Gina's point, even checking my social I'll be doing a few today and tomorrow about name changes and gender marker changes, the way that I can describe it on a macro level without the state specific nuances. But since that has been the most requested legal service, doing a few Rainbow Minutes around that and demystifying that to allow people to feel confident to do it DIY. It's absolutely DIY-able. So to Gina's point, yes, you can find me on social, but you can also learn from me on social as well.
I watched several of them before interviewing you.
You see, there you go. That's awesome. And then you can, to help with the cause, donate. Had no idea the amount of gas that it would take to take a 14,000 pound, 32-foot RV cross country, 5,000 miles. So if you go to the website, caravanofhope.lgbt, right up top, it'll say, please donate to the maiden voyage. And you can find us on social, Caravan of Hope, LGBT on Instagram, Caravan of Hope on Facebook. My personal socials, Angela Giampolo and Your Gay Lawyer, are being used for this as well. But so donating, but also just supporting, getting the word out. Ultimately, the caravan going cross country and everything that I'm doing is all well and good. But if folks don't know that I'm in town on the day that I'm in town, like tomorrow in Omaha, Nebraska, right? And then nobody comes on the caravan and nobody gets service. So far that hasn't happened, but that's definitely what I'll be building on for next year. So I'm keeping the same itinerary 3 years in a row. This was the maiden voyage to work out all the kinks, to do the itinerary. We are going to tweak some things. Albuquerque over Santa Fe. We went last minute Omaha over Lincoln due to finding a safe location. Birmingham was super hard to find. So this is working out the kinks. And then next year, really building on partnerships, doing things like this sooner. And yeah, making it even more successful next year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give a plug for the power of PR, right? Getting the word out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you go anywhere near Detroit on this trip?
I guess Chicago and then Columbus.
Okay.
Would be the closest. So Columbus, Ohio, before that Chicago, after Columbus it's Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And then Philly's service day is June 30th. So
that's awesome. I'm putting it on my calendar. If I can get down to Philly, I will, of course. Just depends on everything else that's going on. And if you do get to the Detroit area, definitely look up Roy Sexton, who I mentioned to you previously. I'm going to make sure that you two are connected. Shout out to you, Roy. You're one of my many LGBTQ heroes, like Angela. And I'm just so happy to have you on the show and to be able to provide another safe place as an ally to the community.
Exactly. The platform, right? Like you have a platform, and something you said earlier about the fact that you acknowledge the layers and the nuances of the difficulties and the hardships that are faced by the LGBTQ community, and not enough allies are aware of that. And so often I hear from allies, oh, I'm totally cool with the fact that you're gay, right? And they think that's helpful because they're saying, I'm totally cool with it. But it's like, I need you to also be vigilant with me. I don't want you to just be cool with it. It's about being vigilant with me, next to me, using the resources at your disposal, right? Which is what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you for having me on. And thanks for being an awesome ally with your homemade Canadian pride cup.
my Canadian coffee cup, my ceramic mug. You know, it is important. And I just want to say that to the business owner listeners, no matter what kind of company you're in, this also means supporting same-sex marriage because it affects your employees. It means supporting same-sex adoption. It means providing medical benefits and other benefits to same-sex couples. I am surrounded by people who identify in the LGBTQ community. I love them all the same, but that's not enough. We have to stand up in our schools. We have to stand up against bullying. There's so much we can do that it seems, and I think a lot of people just don't know what they can do, because if they identify as cisgender, it's like, well, I can get married, or I can do it this way. Well, it's not that way for everyone. And so, I mean, a member of our team who I'm very close to got married in Maine the day that same-sex marriage was ratified in Maine. And I was just so excited that that individual could have the same rights that I get to have. And so it's just, you know, the way my brain works is it just doesn't make sense that we're still fighting this fight, but it doesn't make sense that we're fighting a lot of fights these days. That being said, we are. And so I just want to encourage our listeners to really listen and understand the plight of people who are struggling, because it's heartbreaking.
And you know, and you mentioned business owners, right? And business owners obviously own businesses, but they're human, right? There's a founder, there's the leader, if you will. And it's important to know that, like, if it makes sense, right, it makes dollars as well, right? So equality makes sense. And there's a whole business case behind championing equality. You know, and I want to mention King Financial, who's a financial services firm, and they're our platinum sponsor. Without them, the Caravan itself, you know, that I rented for the month. But here's a financial services firm, not owned by an LGBTQ individual. Majority, if not the whole staff, is cisgender, straight, right? But they wanted to do something. right? And they don't necessarily know what to do from themselves, but they know the Caravan of Hope can do the thing, right? So as a business owner and or just as a busy person, you don't always have to be the one standing on the front lines doing the thing, like I get it. There's just so many causes and so many things and what have you. And so, but if it makes dollars, it makes sense, right? And if it makes sense, it eventually makes dollars. And so there's just also a business case to be said for equality that I feel like not enough LGBTQ advocates talk about because we're so busy doing the thing, right? But in writing for the Philadelphia Business Journal, in writing for the Legal Intelligencer, like I'm constantly making both arguments, like be an ally for the goodwill piece of it, but also your clientele will love the fact that, wow, King Financial stands for something and they put their money where their mouth is. And but for them, this caravan wouldn't be rolling and, all the things. And so, and, to the business owners listening, you will alienate some folks, right? Like not every single one of your clients is pro LGBTQ, but if you stand for that, making a stand and being out and supporting causes that may alienate some folks, you'll end up doing business with who you want to do business with. So final plug there just for business owners, because you're right. Not everyone knows what they can do, but and then they get paralyzed in that and end up not doing anything. And it could simply be, we have a documentarian on board and someone underwrote that and really tangible things that you can get behind. So I feel like there's always something someone can do.
Well, with that, we're going to say thank you to our listeners. I thank you for your time on your journey today. And I look forward to all the great feedback we're going to receive on this conversation. So have a great trip and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Gina. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to On Record PR. Visit our website, onrecordpr.com, to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends on social media, find show notes, additional episodes, and more information. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, feel free to send us questions or show ideas at podcast@onrecordpr.com.